Welcome to the Sales Wings Expert Interview Series with host Philip Schweitzer and Shift CEO Elizabeth Ross.
Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Philip Schweitzer. I'm a co-founder and CEO here at SalesWings. SalesWings is a lead and account analytics platform for Salesforce and Braze. And today we have a very special guest with us, Liz Ross. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you.
And Liz is the president and CEO of Shift. Shift is a growth and business partner for innovative organizations, helping these companies transform their digital programs and navigate the daunting landscape of marketing and how it evolves. And Liz brings 25 years of experience running and growing some of the most successful agencies out there. And she's worked with companies like IBM, Citibank, Pepsi Cola, to really help them pioneer brand-consumer relationships with strategy and technology. So welcome, Liz, on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here and really looking forward to this conversation.
Likewise. It's great to have you. I also know you've just passed a very busy period. Shift has just made an acquisition of Principal Studios. So we'll talk a little bit about this after. But maybe tell us a bit more about yourself and how you became or how you've come all the way to now becoming president and CEO of Shift. And then maybe also a tiny bit how the role of the CEO of such a successful agency has evolved during that time. So very curious to hear a bit more about that.
For sure. So I promise I won't go all the way through elementary school. But what I will tell you is that I am the daughter of an artist and a computer programmer. And that sort of unique blend really sort of as a kid, sort of that left brain, right brain work was pretty impactful for me. And so I'm an early adopter of technology. I always have been. And so, I went through college and thought I was going to be an art director. And I loved advertising. I knew I wanted to be in advertising when I was quite young. And so went to school, got a degree in advertising and marketing with an emphasis in graphic design. And started off on the creative side of the business. But what I realized pretty early on was the impact of technology, but also the power of presentation and good storytelling. And so I became the art director who would do all of the new business pitches. And because at that time, and it dates me a little bit, all of the executives were scared of the computer, so they would take me with them. And so I got to be in these incredible rooms, sort of running presentations and watching these incredible storytellers work. And so for me, the thread through my whole career has been sort of innovation and growth. And so that has manifested its way through roles in new business and growth, ultimately into management, through a whole bunch of different types of agencies. So traditional agencies, Moda Media, the very first digital agency that did the very first banner on the internet in 1994 for AT&T and Wired, if you can believe it. And, up through to Tribal DDB, Digitas, into IPG's media group, really understanding sort of the implications of data onto media and inventory, into a full-scale agency independent in Minneapolis called Periscope that we transacted and sold in 2019, and then finally to Shift. So it's my first private equity-backed company and really building a platform. So it's been quite a long journey, but one that is I probably could never have predicted. But again, the theme underneath all of it is change, being really excited about, embracing of, and interested in sort of what drives change. And, fundamentally then into how you help companies grow through that or with that. And to the last part of your question about the role of a CEO, I will tell you that earlier in my career as a CEO, I really believed it was my job to put the company on my shoulders and carry it forward. And what I would read articles about servant leadership and sort of thought to myself, ugh, like, doesn't seem genuine. And what I have realized as I have gotten older is that it is my job to get things out of people's way. And so whether that's in servitude or in service of what I say to the teams at Shift often is that when something is in your way or preventing you from being great, it is my job to get it out of your way. And so I think the role has changed, and likely the role was maybe always the same, and I've changed in it as I've gotten older. But really that premise of both, okay, let's chart the course, but as we move through the course, my job is to make the people that work at Shift better and more effective.
Very interesting. So you touched on several aspects there. So obviously your start in that career as an art director. I think that's how branding looked like at the time, right? You had, so people maybe think of, okay, Mad Men, right, which a lot of people know, and where they're painting and doing those presentations, but very creative. A very creative role and profession. And I think that probably is also one reason how you manage today, how to envision how technology is an enabler then of very personalized customer experiences, right?
Very much so. And, I still love things that are very tactile. I will tell you, before I have young children, but before I had kids, one of my favorite hobbies was bookmaking, and just the idea of something that you can touch. But I think that as humans, right, and you look at where we are today and you look at what's coming, and frankly, already here in many standpoints with AI, our opportunity as marketers, as technologists, is to help companies grow and use technology as a window through, but there's still another human that's on the other end of the process. And I think that, again, is how I've always thought about it, that there's a person, and our job is to connect people with other people who have goods and services for that exchange.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk a little bit about technologies as well after. So of course, technologies are tools, right? Yep. And like an artist can have a great pen, but that doesn't mean that the image afterwards coming out of it is going to be beautiful. But let's take just a moment talking about Shift. So Shift on a higher level positions as a business and a growth partner. But what's behind that? So tell us a little bit about the DNA of Shift. Of course, you have a leading role, right? So everybody in the organization looks up to you. You're the captain or steering the boat. So how does Shift differentiate from some of the other consultancies out there?
Yep. So the DNA of Shift is 5 different companies that were all brought together prior to my arrival. And they were a mix. It was a company called LeadMD, which was out of Arizona, which was focused on sort of lead generation and really on the back of Marketo implementations, but real sort of digital transformation, heavily focused on that mid-market. And the other sort of anchor acquisition was a company called Trendline Interactive, which had really been built on the back of SFMC, and the implementation and creation of sort of these giant email engines, if you will. And so really personalized messaging. So when I joined, everybody was sort of coming together like any good acquisition process. It was very complex. And there were a lot of conversations about, are we a consulting firm or are we an agency? That is
interesting.
A false narrative. It's a false narrative.
Mm.
And on the client side, I don't think any client cares. I don't think they care. I think they're looking for what at the end of the day are you providing for me? What services are you providing for me that I can't acquire or manage in-house, or that, ultimately I need outside expertise in order to deliver. But internally, the push and pull of consulting versus agency was again based on outdated ideas on all sides, right? So when we really started to bring this brand together, launch ultimately what is a different kind of company, what we anchored in was this premise of that what our job is to do is to drive growth so that we are a business and growth partner for our clients. Again, gets us out of sort of, again, a false conversation or narrative that isn't all that helpful and only sort of serves to drive internal friction, if you will, that felt less necessary.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned before how you see your role as a CEO as it relates to your teams and leadership in the business. Would you say actually that with customers it's somewhat similar? So you have customers that come to you, they have certain challenges, they're trying to find the right approach to achieve that growth, or they're trying to fix a challenge. To what extent do you see the role of a consultancy or an agency to do on behalf of the customer, or just really bring them on the right path?
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts there. I've obviously spent a lot of time thinking about this, that I think that our most important value that we can bring to a company is that we can see across a lot of different kind of companies. So when you work inside of an industry, so say you're in insurance, you become very myopic, and you become myopic to your category, certainly, but especially the intricacies of your own company and your own operation.
Mm.
The value that an external partner provides is that we can say, this thing is happening in CPG, or this thing is happening in, software tech, but it's going to apply to you, and you should think about it here as an accelerant. But that sort of ability to see more broadly can only come from the outside. And I remember early in my career, we'd be in a new business meeting or a sales meeting, and somebody on our team would say, "Oh, I am just so passionate about X, the client's business, right? I'm so passionate about insurance." And I would always say, you aren't passionate about that business, or you would have worked there. You're passionate about ours, and you're passionate about how ours can drive their business forward. But that separation, I think, has long been a real sort of Achilles heel of agencies or consultancies that aren't clear on what their business is, and that sort of that chameleon nature of, hey, we disappear into your company, I actually think is what is going away in sort of finding partners that bring different perspectives, bring different points of view, bring different ideas that are born out of seeing horizontally. And so how we operate for our clients is how I operate for our business. I've worked at lots of different companies, so I have different pattern recognition. I've seen lots of these things before, so I can apply it to our business. And that's exactly what I look for our teams. Look horizontally, really passionate about what our business can do for somebody else's, not that we're passionate about their business.
That's an interesting point of view. So when you look at your team and how you organize these teams and how you build a team that's going to be engaging with the customer, does that also translate into not having industry vertical focused teams? Do you consciously put them on different projects? It would make a lot of sense, right?
Yeah, it's always a mix, right? And there's always a push-pull, because when you're in a competitive situation, at some level, the client wants to know that you're not going to spend the first 6 months sort of learning their business, which is 100% fair.
Yeah.
But at the same time, in order to be a really effective accelerant, you have to have a different perspective, which means you have to be able to have thought about it and seen it in other places. So when we're building teams, ultimately you're looking for a mix, right? So if you have somebody that's worked in an adjacent industry or can sort of accelerate that team's knowledge base, because every industry has its own language. But again, that we're very clear on our value, our recommendations, and what we're building actually is less important than being an expert in their business. They're already the expert, but what we need to do is apply it to their expertise.
Yeah. Yeah, it also reminds me a little bit about how customers look at Sales Wings, our company, when they are looking for a partner around their sales and marketing alignment initiatives, or general account analytics, or whatever it is. There comes often that question, who do you work with in our industry? And Sales Wings is industry agnostic. So we solve generally or global challenges that marketing and sales teams face around marketing operations and data and account analytics and all these things. We say, well, we have in many industries, experience and use cases. We may not have, one within your industry with the exact same size and the exact same problem. But it actually is a clear strength that you see how other industries, which may be more innovative or actually just solve the same problem, to bring this in. And I think that's really, it makes sense that that's how the market needs to think, right? It is an advantage. So think about, and maybe that's going to lead us to your partner firms such as Salesforce, Adobe, and Braze. If you look at Salesforce's marketing and how they've pioneered marketing, so it's out of this world, and it's experience driven. And I remember the first time I went to Dreamforce, I thought, well, this cannot be a B2B software conference, right? There's like, I don't know, some avatar running around, and there's like a Hawaiian band playing over there. But it was the best software conference I had ever been to. And you could not do that if you would have just software marketers in their corner doing that, right? So
that's right. And those moments of reinvention are, if you think about Dreamforce, really pioneered it, but they really picked up from CES. They picked up from sort of some of these really big experiential sort of moments, concert tours, and things that just sort of brought you in along that path. So it's a great example. And Adobe Summit is this week. Again, has some of those same markers. You really see the marketing done well is informed by other things.
Yeah. You're gonna go to that conference, or?
You know what, my team is there. We had a number of things, as you mentioned. We just are finishing the completion of an acquisition of Principal Studios.
Yeah.
It's week 2. And so it was really hard to pull out and go spend a couple of days in Vegas. As fun as it is, and as much as I enjoy it, my team is there and doing the run.
Okay. Well, I think in case you will be going to the annual Braze event, I believe that's also going to be in Vegas.
Yes,
don't quote me on it. I believe that's the case, right?
Yep.
So maybe we'll meet up there. But yeah, so you're partnering. So Shift is partnering with Salesforce, Adobe, and Braze. So you've said it in the beginning. So technology is that window to the truth. And I had to look also at your Tech Navigator program, and tech is second, right? So what can you elaborate a bit on this statement? It's the window to the truth.
For sure. So this is foundational, I think, for all of us going forward. And actually I just saw an interview with the CEO of NVIDIA where he actually kind of echoed this, which then leads me to believe it must be true. But if you think of how technology has been sold for arguably the last 20 years, it has been sold as a solution. It is the solution. And, you know, it is not only that, everyone has been told they're one system away, one implementation away from Shangri-La, right?
Yeah.
This place that everything's going to be perfect. The truth, again, if you go back to we're talking to humans, is that when applied correctly, what technology actually is a window to the truth. And when I talk about what Shift's value proposition is to clients, what I tell them is we are an anecdote killer. So anecdotes permeate every company in the world, right? Even Salesforce. When we do this at Dreamforce, this happens, right? There's a million conversations in every office building around the world. When we do this promotion, when we have this kind of event, when we publish this newsletter, this happens. The magic of technology is maybe, but we can actually tell you if it's true or not. And so it can strip away the anecdotal power of, for example, a sales team saying marketing doesn't matter. All that matters is when my sales team is on the ground and has these meetings, this happens. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe. So the window to the truth gives any company and any role inside of that company, whether it's the CIO, the CMO, the chief sales officer, the complete picture of what is the facts. And then they can decision based on those facts and those sources of truth in a way that accelerates them very, very quickly. Because anecdotes are often shades of the truth, right? And there's reasons why they're in there, people. And the technology actually gives you the answers for what gets tweaked or adjusted or doubled down on in order to then tell you how to grow. And that is the real power of the tech. It's a window to the truth.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And where do companies get it wrong, right? I mean, so you have, and you have it on your website too. So you're stating Gartner 33% of capabilities and tools are used within these organizations. And I feel sometimes executives feel like technology is that magic thing. It's going to change everything, like you've said before. But there's people that are going to be running these technologies, right? So they need to be ready for that. They need to buy into the vision. They need to be able to work with it and understand it. And I see certain technological trends that are problematic, right? So you have technologies that are taking technology away from certain business teams, and then they give it to maybe a data team or kind of a more the CTO's team or the CIO's team or something. And but generally there's a lot of power in it. But where do companies get it wrong? What's your insight there?
Yep. So probably first and foremost is not understanding process coupled with technology. So we're just going to implement this technology that is divorced from or not acknowledging what is the processes that are running on top. So that's probably the biggest disconnect that we see, right? And again, the Gartner study shows that of technology that companies have bought, 30% of the features are being used. It goes back to back in the old days. One of my favorite little nuggets was that Sprint, this is early 2000s, could tell whether or not you were going to change your cell phone carrier based on how many features you used. So if you never set up your voicemail, you weren't
Mm.
gonna stay with them. The tech has many of those similar markers. What you are using, how you are using it, has to be built into the processes, not the other way around. So I think that's where companies really get it wrong. And I think the secondary sort of, and maybe equally as problematic, is that the data infrastructure that is sitting underneath companies is almost universally poor. It's the result of, there are lots of reasons for it. It's not there are very few companies that say, yes, I have clean data files. I've got it structured so that I can apply an AI layer on top of it and everything's going to be great. So you sort of have these dueling features where you have a human process element that's been sort of perhaps overlooked. And then you have sort of debt in the data structure so that you don't have a good foundation upon which to build. And so I think that's largely where companies get it wrong. The good news is that with AI, with what's sort of happening in the LLMs, is that much of that can get corrected relatively quickly on this infrastructure side. But you're still going to need people and process. Again, it will look different than it has historically. And what I loved was the CEO of NVIDIA saying, you're probably thinking you should be training your kids to be computer scientists. You shouldn't. You shouldn't. You should be training them in domain expertise because the software is going to be created by software. So I think that's profound, and companies have a real opportunity to move quickly through the application of really smart MarTech. But most companies don't have a good sense of where they are now. They don't have a good read on what actually drives the growth of their business. And they need sort of we call it Shift Tech Navigator, but they need that map. They need that anchor source of truth. Here's what we all work off of. And that's where I believe we are differentiated ourselves from other consultancies. Back to one of your earlier questions, that we'll come in and show you the map. And then ultimately, if you want to build that out with your internal teams, you want to build it with Salesforce or Adobe, great. Our job isn't to make you dependent on us. Our job is to show you and build you a map and then collectively help your business grow.
Yeah, at times, and we see this as well, hindering, successful technological implementation. So I'm not talking about us, but in general, specifically if you think about CDP, so CDP, which maybe aims to fix some of those data issues, but not only. I think the challenge for organizations are also, are we ready or not to go a step further? And then on the one hand, probably never fully ready. And I think that's what happened before the pandemic. You had a lot of companies, they were holding off. They were like, okay, so let's first fix this, and then we're going to fix that. And then came kind of that, let's call it a technological pandemic. Everybody started to buy everything. And they're like, okay, now we're like in the thing, and we have to work with what we have and so on. So it's difficult, right? And I think, you are a great example of, I feel, of an executive and a professional that, was maybe also given that technical affinity by, I think, your father or your mother, and you had the creativity, you grew up with that. But sometimes I feel having a deep understanding of tech and how to utilize it, some people maybe have it, some others maybe have it less or don't. Would you agree with that? I mean,
100%. And I think in fact, I was meeting with our HR team this morning, and we were talking about training. right? And sort of how do you help people sort of clear these hurdles? And, I'm a big believer in you just get in and start playing around, you experiment. Back again as a kid, it was my dad who was the computer programmer. And what he said was, you should not play video games until you understand how they're constructed. So we were learning basic sort of if-then commands.
Yeah.
And I am by no means a technologist, right? And I would, my team would be horrified if I suggested that I was. But I think that it is the openness and willingness to experiment and try and see that really guides that growth trajectory. And I tell the story often that I lived in San Francisco in 2002. I lived there for about 10 years, but in 2002, and a social network launched called Friendster. It was terrible, right? It was the weirdest thing. We tried it. We thought, oh, silly, dismissed, right? That's dumb. We don't have to think about that. You got Facebook launches in 2005, 2006, 2007. It's getting more commercialized. I'm working with Clorox at the time. And we should be addressing this with a strategy. But that gap was 5 years, right? 5 years from this is dumb to we have to really get our arms around this. Today, if you tried ChatGPT 3.5 30 days ago and thought that it was silly, you don't have 5 years. You have probably 30 days where you're going to cycle through it again and it's changed. And so I think for all of us, are we ready? Are we not? Am I ready? Am I not? Or anybody who's I'm hoping to hang on and just retire before this is a thing. Unless you are planning on retiring this afternoon, it's a thing. And it means that being open and willing to, I love TikTok. I find myself on all of the platforms trying to understand how things are constructed. It's the most important thing we can do.
Yeah. And it's again, it's daunting, right? And I think it came so fast. Nobody really saw it coming. Some maybe, but it feels like it's taking everything over, right? And there is, think coming back to SWOT, opportunity and risk. And that's also how I feel a lot of executives feel these days, is they see opportunity everywhere. They don't know where to start. They're super worried they're going to be left behind. And as you said, it's moving very, very fast. So you have this actionable AI program, and I found it very interesting and actually very clever. So the focus and the headline is kind of build and launch your AI program, or pilot, sorry. AI pilot program. There you go. And I think that's a great approach, because AI, I don't think, is something where you can just plan it, look at the tools out there and then going for one and choose it and go with it. But you have to sort of jump in the water, touch everything, and then kind of see, okay, where is the first opportunity? Where is it going? And so on, right?
100%. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
that can be the main takeaway, right? Is get in the water.
Yeah.
Get in the water. It is. And that is that sort of, for me or for anybody listening, creativity comes from being in the water, right? And you're going to see a million things that don't work or that are irrelevant or can be dismissed. But creativity is also born out of optimism, which is, I know we can assemble these things or make something out of all of this that is better than what we are doing today. And optimism and that openness and creativity is ultimately what leads to growth.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, so much to come. I think we're gonna maybe talk in a year from now about AI. See
Yes.
how silly we sound today, uh,
Exactly.
but no, it's interesting, and so we talked about it quickly at the start. So you recently acquired Principal Studios, very strong expertise in UX, UI, and then engineering, right?
Yeah.
Why not hire a huge team of prompt engineers instead?
Yeah. It's fascinating. I think that the prompt engineering as a thing is probably a little further out than we would all expect. And I think that if you go back to even our conversation about Dreamforce, or you go back to sort of experience, the understanding and being able to map a consumer or customer's experience, that discipline of designing UI and UX and mapping technology to it is more needed now than ever, because you'll see the AI designed things that are going to be crazy, right? And again, in the water, there'll be many of them that work, but the pattern recognition, the ability to understand how to build an experience, regardless of the platform, will always be more valuable than just playing it around and trying to build it from prompts. So I really believe in the Principal team and the expertise, and that it is directly applicable to currently what is in front of us right now, but also equally important, if not more important, what is next.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm wondering, I mean, AI, it brings also a lot of, on the one hand, we're wondering, right, to what extent is it going to nurture creativity or taking creativity away from people? But I see, after all, an exciting thing happening as well. It also kind of, brings some of the creativity back. Because if you think about websites. So the worst website I've built back home was with Dreamweaver HTML stuff, right?
Yep.
I was super excited. I got the first page out, and then boxes were aligned and things like this. A few years later, it was WordPress. So it's like, okay, wow, now it's even a lot easier. And now you have stuff like Webflow, or now come these AI website builders. I haven't found a great one yet. If you know one, let me know.
Yeah. Yes.
Still, it makes it makes the end result kind of more accessible, and still you have to interact with AI, right? So let's say you make a prompt, okay, do this image, and it does something you haven't expected. Like, okay, now take it, go like this. So I think it's exciting as it relates to campaign strategy and omnichannel strategy. We'll see, right? So I think a lot of the experience you've mentioned and the know-how is going to be critical. And we've talked about the risk for younger generations now. Maybe it's too easy, right? It's too easy. So, are you going to really understand in what you're doing?
Yeah, and I think that, and again, not to reference back to the NVIDIA CEO, but he has a great quote that, again, I will do no justice to, but I would recommend everybody listening go read, which is about the importance of struggle. And I think that the risk for us with AI is not the removal of creativity, but as everything becomes easier, as everything becomes more perfect, where do we find evidence of humanity? And so much of the human condition is born out of struggle, is born out of mistakes, is born out of, saying the wrong thing or not having all the facts. And so I think that is, for us as a species, not to take it too philosophical, but it's where sort of our opportunity is, and essentially where I believe the risk is.
Yeah. exciting times ahead. I mean, I think the only constant is change, right? So again, the success will
100%.
be Darwin's principle. How can we adjust to that? So one question I wanted to ask you as well. So we're sort of approaching the end of time. You've come a long way in your career, and a lot of people look up to, you know, successful professionals like you who've made it. If you could go back in time, meet the young Liz Ross, what advice would you give her? And maybe what advice would you give to, you know, people watching this show? Yeah, with some tips and insights.
For sure. So I have two, I think, really good ones. And as you can imagine, I've thought a lot about this. I think as you get to certain stages in your career, and one of the little secrets is you never feel like you've made it. It's always sort of there's always more to do. But I think the most important sort of lesson I could impart to my younger self or to anyone listening is that you cannot make a mistake.
You cannot.
There are no mistakes.
Oh.
So if you are faced with a choice of two different kinds of jobs or two different job offers, or should I stay at my current job or should I leave, or whatever choice you make is going to lead you to the next thing. So you should never, if you go and do something and it's terrible and they dislike you and you dislike them and you find yourself fired, it's not a mistake. It's just taking you to the next thing. And so there should be no analysis paralysis. And the more that you can avoid playing the would've, could've, should've game, because that's impossible. So face forward, and you cannot make a mistake.
Yeah, that's a great thought. And it's a great final thought. I think we can end it with this one. Yeah, it was a great conversation, Liz. I really enjoyed it. Learned as well, and hope we'll do this again sometime in the future. I think we should do it again in a year.
I love it. I love it. And if nothing else, we can certainly connect at the Braze conference and have some drinks in Vegas and talk about all the mistakes we did not make.
We did not make, that's right. Awesome. So thanks a lot, Liz, and thanks as well to the audience here, and wish everybody a great rest of your day. And yeah, thanks, Liz, and have a good one.